Welcome to the third and final segment in our video series that shows how to use Visio to create UML data models. In this segment, we'll be adding associations between the classes that we added to our diagram in the prior video. Let me switch back to the Visio screen, and you'll see here the two classes that we added in the prior video segment. At this time, what we want to do is to add an association between the operating room and the operation because we know that operations are performed in the operating room. The binary association is the default association type that we're going to be using. And so if you click on binary association and move it across your screen, you'll see that you can attach an end of the association to one of the classes by overlaying the X's, both at the endpoint and at one of the connector points. When I release my mouse, the association is created, but only with one end attached. So I'm going to click on the second end and move that end over so that it's connecting to the additional operating room resource. At this point, I have an N1 and an N2 and some initial multiplicities displaying on the screen. The next thing I want to do is assign a name for this association and refine the multiplicities to actually match the situation in which I am working. So to do that, I'm going to double-click on the association, and that will bring up the association properties window. This is a stock flow association because the economic event of an operation actually uses some of the resource of the operating room. And so I'm going to name this association stock flow 1. If I were creating the diagram for the whole operating room scenario, or in fact the whole sales process, I would have several other stock flows, each of which would be incremented. So I'd have stock flow 1, 2, 3, etc. After I've given a name to my association, then I want to specify the multiplicities. And I find that it's easier to do if I move the properties window so that I can see my diagram. I'm going to have to assign a multiplicity associated with N1 and another multiplicity associated with N2. So N1, as you can see, is closer to the operating room. In order to determine what multiplicity should be at N1, I actually have to tell the story starting with operation. An operation is performed in how many operating rooms? And when I say how many, I want to be clear that we need to know both the minimum and the maximum. Well, in an emergency room, an operation is always performed in an operating room. And so an operation is performed in a minimum of 1 operating rooms. And in fact, the operation is performed in only 1 operating room. And so I'm going to change the multiplicity for N1 to be 1 and 1. That's going to specify that an operation is performed in 1 and only 1 operating room. When I go the other direction, I say an operating room can be used to host how few or how many operations. Well, an operating room can actually exist prior to hosting any operations at all. And in fact, we'd want to be able to track as the room was being created, as it was being inspected. And so an operating room can be associated with no operations. But over the life of the operating room, of course, we expect it to be used in order to perform many operations. And so the multiplicities at N2 would be a minimum of 0 and a maximum of many. Once I've specified the multiplicities, if I click OK, my screen will be updated. Now I still see the N names. I see the new multiplicities, and in fact I can double check an operation is performed in 1 and only 1 operating room. An operating room could host 0 or many operations, so I have them in the right place. But now my concern is that I really want to display the name of the association, stockflow 1, and I don't need to know the names of the 2 endpoints. Well, to do that, I could either right-click on the association, or once I've highlighted the association, as I have here, if I click on Shape, and then Actions, and Shape Display Options, I can bring up another window that will allow me to specify what do I want to see in my diagram. Well, I do want to see the name of my association, and I don't need to see the first and second names of the association. And so if I change the selections based on these requirements, Now I see the association name. I still see the multiplicities, but I don't see the end and the beginning. You can also specify in that shape window whether you want additional shapes of the same type, in this case binary association, to be displayed the same way. The other thing that I've done is sometimes when I'm creating large documents, I'll put in all of the associations and then I'll click all of those associations. When I bring up the change shape window, I can change all of the association parameters simultaneously. After I've added the association, I'd want to save this diagram, and at this point I've completed my UML class diagram for one small portion of the operating room. In order to create the diagram, I'd just add the other classes, I'd add the other associations, and my diagram would be complete. And so this completes the video segments on how to use Visio to create a class diagram.